Yeah, Buckley. I lived in Iowa since 2009. Moved here from Michigan. Mainly public land hunter, even though I bought my own property out here. I've had it 7 years now, but still hunt public land pretty much, you know, especially bow hunting, probably 75% of the time. I've killed deer in Michigan, of course, Nebraska, Kansas, Ontario, Iowa. A lot of them in Iowa. I don't know, there might be another state or something, but anyways, yeah, public land's my thing. Enjoy the adventure. It's nice having your own property, but I got 240 acres here that I bought, but just something about that public land, you know, it's the adventure, I guess. I got, you know, thousands of acres. I kind of get bored of the same thing, so I'm always exploring. I'm constantly looking for new places. I scout probably 200-300 miles every late winter, early spring. The average, I don't know, 15 miles a weekend sometimes, just scouting new areas. And I guess with that, I'll pass it on to Rendell.
Rendell Erik. I've lived in Iowa for 10 years. I'm originally from the South. I hunt all public land. I can't afford my own private land, so I just do the public grind. Probably scout about like Scott does, 200 to 300 miles a year. I've hunted a lot of other states too. Public land, kind of out of necessity, but I've hunted some private and it feels like cheating to me. I miss like the grind of public, the adventure. You can bounce around anywhere, go to any state and just jump right on and go. I'm a school teacher and I kill big bucks.
I forgot that part. I kill big bucks too.
Boners, baby!
There's a few of them up in here.
Alright. So I guess the question is, when did you guys first start hunting public, and what was it a draw or just out of necessity for both of you?
I'll start out. I was raised in Michigan. Used to kill lots of deer in Michigan, but the area I grew up in, the Thumb, it was rare when I was young to shoot a 2.5-year-old, you know, 110-inch deer. It was a trophy. And I mean, years of shooting so many small deer, I wanted to up my game a little and hunt more of a trophy. So that's when I started, you know, I knew I wasn't getting it in Michigan, so I started going to different states. We'd go to, oh, that's another state I hunted in, Ohio. That's where I started hunting a lot. We'd go down to Ohio, and I didn't hunt the public down there. We used to get permission on different pieces. I guess there was a couple maybe timber companies we hunted on. They were kind of like public, but so yeah, I went there. But my kind of first big hunt was in 96, I think. I went to Kansas, southeast Kansas. That's where I shot that one. That was my best buck to date at that time. I scouted, I don't know, 2 or 3 public areas in Kansas. Back then we didn't have phones with, you know, aerial photos and Google Maps and all that. So I'd buy the old paper topographical maps and I would spend hours like studying these paper maps just to see where to hunt. And that's when I went to Kansas and we kind of set up and I shot that buck, you know, that year on that hunt. And from there I was hooked. That's when I started putting in for Iowa, and when I started traveling around and hunting different states. Now I kind of stick pretty much to Iowa because I bought this property here, so it keeps me so busy, you know, between Iowa public. I haven't traveled much since I bought this, but I definitely plan on it. I mean, I'd like to take the boy. We were talking about maybe going to Nebraska. That's another state. I don't think I mentioned Nebraska. I've hunted Nebraska too. But yeah, that's how my public land got started. And you know, I was looking for that next, you know, like Rendell, I couldn't afford property, and I have permission on some private pieces over the years, but those pieces I always got permission on always had other people too. So, you know, you take a 100-acre piece that had 2-3 guys hunting it, I'd rather go hunt the public land with 1,000 acres. You know, I found more, I could pattern deer and get on deer better on big tracts of public than I could, you know, permission private. That they just let everybody in the door. But so that's kind of my public land, how I got started.
So for me, my grandparents had a farm when I was really young, so I kind of got a little bit of hunting in on the private farm, but they died when I was really young. And then my dad was a Marine, so he moved around all the time. He'd get stationed different places, so he wouldn't buy any land because we moved around so much. So I pretty much hunted public land out of necessity. And moving around so much, it's hard to build relationships and get into places. And like Scott said, if you do get in a place, the guy usually lets everybody hunt there, and there's way more pressure than the public land by a long shot. So I just stayed on the public. My parents didn't hunt, so I pretty much just learned everything on my own. So I made a lot of mistakes, and I found that public I could bounce around a lot more and get on a lot more bucks. So if I messed something up, I had an opportunity to get on another one. And as I got older, the hunting industry teaches you to hunt off food plots, and you know, you got to own private land, and they're killing these giant deer, and you're watching all the TV shows, and you go out and do that, and then bucks are showing up after daylight. You're trying to get lucky during the rut, and I just got really burned out on that kind of hunting. So I just wanted something different, so I found the like underground of hunting is what I call it, like the bed hunting guys, mobile hunters. And then being from the south, the deer hunting's not that good. It's a lot of small deer and just numbers, and there's a lot of people, and I just got really burned out on that. And then you see on TV, Iowa's like the golden gem of all whitetail hunting. So I've hunted Ohio, Michigan, Virginia, Tennessee, North Carolina, and some other states too. And I just decided to change my life, packed up everything I owned, and I just moved here. Didn't know anybody, didn't know anything. Then when I got here, I just grinded my ass off, scouted as much as I possibly could all over the state, and switched my style of hunting, and I've been killing giant deer ever since.
All right, so if somebody was just getting into public land hunting, or you know, maybe they're pretty novice at it, what would be one tip or piece of advice if you could give to them, your best advice for them, just whether that's to get on bucks or just to handle the adversity needed sometimes for public land? What would be that?
But
no balls, no bucks. Don't be scared. Get in there. Hunt them first sit. If you can't get it done on that buck, bounce to a different one. And don't worry about other dudes. I find all these guys that call me like, oh, I found a tree stand, or there's this guy was in there. Well, you got to kind of be like, oh, you're a better hunter than they are. Bounce around them, see what they're not picking up. Maybe they're not playing the wind right, or the thermal's right. Really learn your winds and how to access places. Access is huge when you're going into a lot of these public land places. Maybe ask a farmer. They might not let you hunt, but they might let you walk through their field to come in the back door. Just be really aggressive. Don't be afraid to fail. I think you learn more from failure than you do anything else. And don't be ashamed if you fail. Own up to it, because you're learning, and the next time you're not going to make the same mistake. If you're on a giant buck, I feel like guys hang back too much because they get nervous and they're scared. Like, oh, I'm not going to kill that buck if I do this or that. You got to throw that out the window and just go in like a boss and just get it done. Just don't be afraid to scout. Work your off, go grind it. Like, you got to put the miles in. And when you're scouting, just don't walk around the woods and just look around. You got to know what you're looking for, so you need to learn woodsmanship. Like, all the gear in the world is just going to make you a bad hunter with awesome gear. Like, so you need to learn woodsmanship first and then worry about upgrading your gear later. That's what I did, and it worked out for me great. And then just go in there, get it done.
that's why I was going to say the same thing. Scout, scout, scout. You can never get enough scouting in, March. end of February, March, first week or two of April, you learn so much off of your areas. Just walk every mile you can. If you can afford cameras, get them out there. A tip on public land, which I just started doing the last 2-3 years. Get them up in trees. Take a step. Just take one of your steps and get it up 10 feet off the ground. You'll eliminate a lot of theft. I used to run all mine on the ground. I really never lost many, but my theft has went way down. Just getting them 10 feet off the ground. I learned so much off camera work. But yeah, those are two things I was going to say. Scout. Just get out and know your area. Study your maps. You know, I look at these young kids these days that struggle in, you know, some of these big areas. And, you know, when I was younger growing up, we didn't have all the technology. I mean, this stuff here on your phone makes it almost easy to scout these days. There's just so much on your phone, you can see everything. You know, that's where the woodsmanship comes in. I grew up with a woodsmanship where we had to learn how to do that stuff when I was young. And now the phones just take a lot of that hard work away. You still got to do boots on the ground, but of course the maps will give you a starting point on your areas. And you'll study your maps and then just put boots on the ground. Hang some cameras and you'll learn so much. Just hanging cameras, you learn so much about the deer. You know, to me it's not just finding that biggest buck in the woods, but you can study them cameras. Like I tell my boy and some inexperienced people, I said, just when you're going through your cameras, just don't look at the picture. Put a story together with that card. You know, it's like I always use, for example, the people that bought hunting magazines, they scroll through it and look at the buck pictures. You got to read the story to learn how to do it. And the same as a camera card. You know, just don't scroll through and, oh, I got a big buck. You know, read that story. Read where he's coming from. You can see, or even on video mode, you can kind of see where he's coming in, what time of day it is, whether it's morning, you know, if he's daylight, going into bed. That card will tell you so much about deer habit, you know, what a deer is doing. If you learn how to read that, you'll learn so much just off cameras.
Bouncing back off of him, postseason scouting, crucial. There's guys that you see all over Facebook, Instagram right now that are out there. They're miserable. It's 100 degrees. They got ticks, bugs, flies all over them. They can't see the sign. They're having a hard time. Postseason's huge. I've already done 200 miles already, and these guys are just getting started. They're late to the party. I'm already got everywhere I'm going to hang cameras, trees I'm going to hang in. I picked up all the old sign when it's fresh. There's no vegetation. You can glass and see for 500-600 yards sometimes. So you want to go in there early when everybody's sitting at home and you want to get it done then this time of year you can get all your gear ready to go. You get your cameras ready. You can get them out there. And I don't put a lot of stock in the summertime scouting because a lot of deer are going to shift. I'm probably putting my cameras in a little later than a lot of guys are because I'm trying to catch the shift. I don't run a lot of cameras on field edges. I put them right back in where I'm expecting them to shift to because I want to stay out of areas once I set it up. And learning the topographical maps, how wind and thermals work, because I hunt off of buck bedding, so they bed based upon the wind. So like Scott said, reading SD cards, oh, I just got a big buck. All right, well, you want to go to like Weather Underground and look up the historical weather, see what the wind direction is. Then you can take that back to your Spartan Forge of Orozonics or whatever you're running. And you'd be like, okay, well, he had to be here because he's going to bed there on that wind because he's got the wind over the top, thermal's coming up to him if you're in hill country. And then you got to learn all the little situational stuff to really dial in. Details is what kills big bucks. All the stuff that a lot of guys overlook, which comes down to learning woodsmanship. Because there's things I see when I'm walking through the woods that a lot of people don't, that I'm looking for. And just because you don't have a buck on camera doesn't mean there's not one there. I see big bucks skirt my cameras all the time.
Exactly.
Sometimes I just hunt a buck off a track. The buck I killed last year, I just seen a big buck track and I followed it back to a bay while I was shed hunting with a buddy. and I made a mental note of it. Then I went back and scouted my way in and killed him 80 yards from his bed. So, and there's more ways to get it done. Just because one guy's getting it done one way doesn't mean it's going to work for you. You might find a different way. Don't be scared to go deep, and don't be scared to hunt right by the parking lot, because sometimes that's where the big boys are too. So just try to find a system, reach out to guys that are consistent killers, talk to them, try to learn something from everybody, and you, over time, you'll like compile your own system together. Just copying what one guy does is kind of tough, so I like to take a hodgepodge and put it together. And don't take a guy's word for it. I like to vet people. If I hear something on a podcast or a video, I go out in the woods and I actually test it for myself, which does take a lot of time, but it'll help you in the long run, because I want to see that it actually works. And just don't fall into gimmicks. Like, really vet everything really hard, and sometimes less is more.
All right, so mobile hunting and public lands seem like, as of lately, they're pretty much attached at the hip. Would you guys say that you need to be mobile on public to be successful? And if so, how are you guys personally mobile on public?
I grew up old school. I've changed now a lot more, but so for years I would go out, a week before season, preset stands, get all them cheap $30 stands, and we go preset them, and I killed some real nice bucks on them, because I just had that knack for being spot on location, especially like rut bucks, But I noticed like a lot when I used to use them preset stands a lot, and I still got a couple I put out, but most of it's mobile. Like that buck I was telling you out there, I'd sit in that preset stand and all the deer are around in this corner. So, I got down out of the stand, went and sat behind an oak log and killed a 160-inch deer, a few minutes later. But so yeah, I tend to be more mobile now. Even when I preset stands, if I seen deer movement somewhere, the next day I'd bring I would say more, even back in the day when I had a few more preset stands, I would still have my little lightweight. Back then I used a little gorilla stand, a little Silver Lake gorilla or something. If I was in that preset stand and all the buck movement was 100 yards away, I brought that in the next day, set up, and I killed bucks like that. Well, more and more now, especially since, I bought that beast stand last year. That's pretty badass stand, and really lightweight. And, now I'm constantly moving around, and I can go in, just, set her up quick. And another thing, even when I did have preset stands back in the day, and more mobile now, but I was never one to sit in the same stand day after day. I see that so much with guys, even on private land. That's a big thing. People get on their private land things and they go to the same stand. Well, just because you get private land, you burn that spot out in a minute. I'm always worried. Like, I sit in a spot 2 days and I'm like, I'm walking in here leaving Sen. I said, that big buck probably came through last night. Now he knows I'm there. So I get like, that sense like he knew I was there. So I'm constantly moving to try to catch him off guard. I don't like, unless I have a solid access point, like a creek, come in off a creek, come up the bank or something like that. I very seldom sit in a stand more than, a couple sets. And then I'm moving around. And then I move around so many different areas. I'm always worried that big mature buck's gonna cut my track, and he's gonna, they especially in public land, they know you're there. So I'm always trying to catch them off guard. So I become more and more mobile, even though I'm old school, all the time.
So I'm not as smart as Scott is, because not having a mentor or a parent that hunted or a grandparent that hunted, I fell into a lot of the traps and gimmicks starting out. I had low budget and then just going off of what's on TV, so I did a lot of the mistakes that Scott says not to do. I'd sit in one tree stand day after day, because TV shows, if you just sit on this food plot and you wait long enough, a buck's going to come by and you're going to shoot it. I would wear like the rubber boots. I'd change my clothes at the truck, in and out. It'd be like 0 degrees and I'm stripping down, freezing to death, and then switching back in and throwing them in totes and wasting a lot of time. I was on a low budget, so I couldn't afford a ton of tree stands, and the tree stands used to be really heavy and bulk, so I'd be sitting in the tree stand and a buck would come through on a hot doe like 200 yards away, and I'd be like, oh man, you're hoping, wishing, praying that it comes your way, and then it's like you got this super heavy setup and you don't want to move it because you're being really stubborn about it because you know it's going to suck. And then a lot of the times those tree stands you bought, like he said, the $30 ones, they would creak, make a lot of noise once it got cold, so you'd blow a lot of bucks out if you weren't careful about your movements. So as I transitioned out of that, there we go. Yeah, it just pissed me off. Like, I just got sick and tired of it, and I was like, there's got to be a better way. And then I just started getting smarter about it and learning, like, scent control doesn't work, don't waste your time and money on it. Learn to win in thermals. Figure out your access. Don't be afraid to think out of the box. And then I got more mobile, even though I was using the heavy stuff. And as technology's progressed, now I switched into like using the tethered saddles and all the lightweight sticks, and my total setup now is only like 12 pounds, so it's a lot faster and easier for me to get around. I can get right down the tree and I can move, so technology's really helped me. And then by piggybacking off of that, like Scott gets it done with the tree stand and I get it done with the saddle. So if you're a killer, you can kill out of anything, so just keep that in mind.
So Scott, what would you say your favorite buck in this room is currently?
Oh, geez, I don't know. Do I have to pick? Probably this one. I mean, antler-wise, I love this 160-inch 8-pointer. Shot him like November 15th, just a classic rut hunt. But this one, early season, October 3rd, another 170-inch deer. I had pictures of them the year before. Actually, there's quite a story to this shed hunt. We were shed hunting and I found, what year did I, 15 I got him. Shed hunting, me and the boy, I think maybe my daughter was with me then, we found an arrow while we were shed hunting in this big timber, public land. This is the year before when we were shed hunting, I shot it. And we were walking through, I found an arrow, a crossbow bolt, laying on the ground with, I think, a muzzy tip on it. And I thought, wow, that's cool, I kept it. And later on that day, or the next day, I found this shed, and there's a chip in there where somebody shot it with an broadhead right there. And I put that muzzy head, that arrow I found, it fit right in there. Somebody in that woods shot him with a crossbow bolt right in the horn. I mean, we found the arrow and the shed, which is pretty cool. So yeah, then I started putting cameras out that following summer because I had 2 or 3 good bucks. That was another one, his stack of sheds I was hunting that same year. I followed that buck on public land for, I think, 8 years. From when he was 3 years old till like 7 or so. Yeah, that pile there is pretty much all his. Not this buck, but the other one I was hunting. There was 2 big bucks I was hunting. And yeah, these were the 2 big bucks I was hunting back in that same area. That's another thing, when I go to a public land spot, if I got 2 or 3 hit list bucks, it makes instead of hunting specifically one buck, chances I up tremendously if there's 2 or 3 hit shooters in there. Yeah, that was a buck I kept picking up his sheds every year and never did get into them, but that, back to that buck. So yeah, we found a shed that year, and then we started putting cameras up. I started getting them on camera in July, and down in this bottom. So we kind of preset a spot like this. It was a big brushy bottom, like old cattle pasture back in the day, and then the state bought it. And then there was ag fields behind that. That brushy bottom was probably, a 1/4 mile of bottom. You come out of the ag fields and you got 1/4 mile brush. And then there was a finger that come up into the big timber. The finger was timber, but there was a big knob up there where they all bedded up top. Usually I don't hunt a lot of mornings in the early season unless it's really cold. There was a cold front that morning where it was in the 20s, October 3rd, and I got into that stand. I snuck up a creek bed. I stayed in the creek so I didn't leave scent, and I snuck up the back side of the finger because he would have crossed my scent path, but I stayed in that creek, you know, Sandy Creek, so he probably never picked up my scent. And he crossed at 8:20 in the morning. He come up the hill and eating acorns, and I think I let him have it 25 yards. I heard him crash, but yeah, it was super, super cool. Get it early. You know, I haven't shot a lot of early season deer like Rendell here. He's a master of that, but yeah, that was pretty cool. I've shot some in like middle of like October. I've shot a few of them October 20th on, but that was the earliest I shot a good buck, October 3rd, and yeah, that's about probably my favoriteest one here.
All right, Rendell, same question to you.
All right, so my favorite buck is my buck I shot last year. It's 175. I was shed hunting with a buddy. He wanted to go shed hunting. I normally don't shed hunt because I spend all my time postseason scouting instead. If I find them, I find them. I don't really care about them. But I really try to be an all-around hunter, so I like to challenge myself to go to new terrains or terrains I'm not really familiar with. So he asked me to go shed hunting, so I picked this public land marsh that I knew about that I've never hunted at. So we went down there and we were scouting around, and I noticed one bedding area was like cattail type setup, and there was some sign in there, and I found a couple beds, and then we worked our way back, and there was another bedding area, and I had about 30 rubs in it right on the marsh edge that kind of caught my eye. And then we kept going, and then I just happened to catch a buck track, because when I'm walking around I'm looking at everything. I'm looking for like licking branches, scrapes, rubs, beds, any type of feeder trails, because a lot of times the main trails the bucks don't really run. They run these little smaller trails that guys don't notice. And I just happened to catch a big set of tracks, splayed toes, about the size of my hand. So I knew it was a big buck, and I just followed it back. It dead-ended into this big marsh bay, and I just looked out and I happened to catch that there was a point out there, and I was like, okay, he's probably bedded out there on this wind, because over time I've learned on, you know, the buck bedding thing, how bucks bed in different terrains on what winds and things like that. So I just took a mental note of it, and we kept shed hunting. So come back to the start of the season, I went to a totally different zone I've never been to help a buddy that drew his first Iowa tag ever, so he's stoked. So I spent a lot of time helping him out, summer scouting, trying to find him some bucks. And then I spent the first week up there hunting with him, kind of videoing and just kind of popping around, doing some in-season scouting. And then I came back and started on my home turf, and took me 4 days. The funny thing is, Sunday I was hunting, and then I got a call that my air conditioner caught on fire. So I had to take the day off work on Monday, and the repairman was like, I'll call you in the morning. I was like, all right. So it's about 11 o'clock now, and the guy hasn't called me yet, and I'm kind of getting pissed off because I could be getting ready to go hunting. So I was like, screw this. So I got all my hunting stuff ready. I loaded the truck, and I'm like, if this guy's not here by 2 o'clock, I'm going hunting. And I looked at the wind. I started looking at spots that I postseason scouted and looking at different bedding areas, and then I just had a gut feeling that that public land marsh was a spot to get it done at. It's set up perfectly for the wind. So 2 o'clock came, he never called me, so I took off. And I got down there in a couple hours. I didn't have too much time, but early season, because it's only October 11th, you know, it doesn't get last lights like 7:30ish, I think, so I still had plenty of time. I hit the first bedding area. There was some rubs going into it, but I didn't feel like it set up right for the wind. I went back to the second bedding area where I found all those rubs, where I first picked up his tracks. No rubs at all. So I was like, all right, he's not up front in the public. So I ended up 2 miles back. I picked a channel about waist deep of water I walked through to get back to this point. And when I was getting closer, I always used my binoculars to look at sign far away, or if I can catch like a glare off an antler or some kind of movement. And I just happened to notice there was thousands of honey locust pods hanging in the trees, and I could hear them falling. And the honey locusts are like an early season and late season food source for deer. They have like a early season, they got like a pulp. It smells really good. It's kind of liquidy, and then after that they don't really get on it till after they freeze, and it kind of converts into sugar. Kind of like the same thing like soybeans early, soybeans late, corn in between. So I thought they'd be coming onto that point, hitting the honey locust, and they'd move out the 2 miles to the nearest cornfield. Because I find early October the bucks are already on corn. Right when the season opens, they're not on beans that much for me, so I don't even mess with beans early at all. So I slid right up in there. I took my time. You want to move really slow, watch all your noise, movements. I was looking at the point. I was throwing milkweed out, watching it, and it was coming right across that creek channel I was accessing, and water pulls your thermals. Hot water will pull them down and push them up, and cold water will pull it down and then flood it right above the water. I like running water because it'll pull your thermals out and away from you, but being in a marsh, the water wasn't really running, but I felt like it'd be alright because that buck's probably not going to come from any direction except for right in front of me. So I crawled up on the point, took my time, and then I started glassing as I was crawling up, and I seen one rub on a trail about 30 yards up the point. So I probably wanted a 20-yard shot to have a good shot angle. So I slid up about 10 yards, and then as I was crawling up, I turned around and started looking behind me because I'm more of a backdrop hunter. I hunt really low, 2 sticks. I set up 9 feet high, but I had a branch kicking off at an angle about like that. I like to have no cover in front of me. I don't care what cover's on the tree I'm in. I normally don't hunt behind the tree like traditional saddle hunters do because I'm 6'8", so I feel like I just look like a branch. And I hold my bow the whole time like that, so when the bucks come in I can draw straight back, and the limbs will actually hide my draw. And then I was set up for that, and then he came right up out of the bed 80 yards away. He walked 30 yards straight at me to 5 yards, and he stopped to eat some honey locusts, and I smoked him. So that's my favorite buck because I just surgically went in there, I played everything right, everything set up the way I thought it would, and I just got it done.
Alright, awesome guys. So unless there's anything you want to leave me with, I think that about wraps it up. You guys have anything to say, or did we cover it all?
No balls, no bucks.
There we go. No balls, no bucks.
Kill those out, son!
Yeah, this was a buck right here, 2018. I haven't talked about him much over the years because he was such a big buck, but this buck's probably long gone. In fact, he disappeared a year after I was hunting him. I had good friends of mine, especially one guy. He's a scorer for Food and Crockett and Pope and Young. Scores deer all over Iowa. He estimated him at 240. Some guys 230, but anyway, somewhere in there. But yeah, I was seeing him kind of on some private land in the summer, and then I started hanging cameras. I picked him up, a bunch of pictures in July, August of them on one public piece. I didn't check cameras till the first week of October, and he was all over my camera. So I started hunting in there, and little did I know he'd moved. That was his summer area. I was like 2 steps behind him all that year. Then I went to another public land piece 3 miles away, and I had like checked them cameras, I think the end of November, and I had them in there the middle of November. I was just always behind them, never run into them. So that winter I just bought the cheapest camera I could, like 20, 30 of them, and carpet bombed the whole area, all the public land pieces, and never picked them up anywhere, never ever heard of them again after that. So I don't know if he got poached, if you know, we had EHD the following summer, that could have killed him, but he was definitely one of the biggest deer I've ever hunted, and pretty cool. You don't see them like that on public land, and just really anywhere. That's a world-class deer, you know, anywhere, even in Iowa, 240. But yeah, pretty cool story behind that.